Okay, so is it cool if I start my presentation?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, cool. So this is just a really quick presentation about keyframes. I just have like 2 or 3 slides. So the main thing with keyframes is to remember that they're how you define the transition points of an animation. So the first thing that you have is this at keyframes. It tells a browser that the code after the at keyframes will define a keyframe. And then directly after you specify at keyframes, and the bottom right corner here, there's an example. Example would be the name of the keyframe that you could use, that you would reference in your CSS in the attributes, animation attribute. And then you have brackets, an opening and a closing bracket where you define the keyframe, the different transitions. So there's 2 main methods to define it. If you're just switching from one style to the next, then you would say at keyframes example, and then where instead of the 0, 25, 50, and 100%, you'd have from, and then you'd specify, so in this case it'd be background color to a different background color. Or you can define different stages, anywhere between 0 to 100%. You can, like in this case, there's 4. So when the keyframe is 25% through, it'll change to yellow. When it's 50% through, it'll change to blue, and at 100%, it'll change to green. And it'll change depending on how long the duration is that you set in the CSS property. So in CSS, you have an animation property. This is what it looks like in the second one. You'll have animation, and then it'll have a colon. And then the name, that's going to be the name of the keyframe that you're referring to. So if we go back to here, we would say example, and that would reference this whole keyframe. Duration is how long in seconds the animation will last. So usually it'll be like 2 seconds or something like that. Delay is how long, it'll also be in seconds, how long from when it's called to how long to when it starts. The timing function, examples are like ease in, ease out, and cubic Bezier, or how throughout the animation it will go quick in the beginning and then slow at the end, or opposite, or you can customize it more with a cubic Bezier. And then a fill mode determines what happens after the animation. So if you would specify forwards as the fill mode, then after whatever you change the property to within the keyframe, the property will maintain that same attribute or state, I guess you could say. So for example, if you had something where the last at 100%, the keyframe was green, when the animation was over, if the fill mode was not set to forwards, then it would revert back to whatever it was before the animation. But if it is set to forwards, then whatever 100% is in the keyframe is what the background color will be after the animation. So just a quick example. This is from taking advanced CSS right now. And so just to show kind of what it looks like. So in this case, there's a div called demo, and we're styling a demo before, so a pseudo element. And so this is the keyframe, show background. By default, it is the before pseudo element is out of the frame of where the main element is, so it's not visible. When the key or when the animation starts, the first step will be to translate it, so to bring it into scope. And then so this translates it left, I think, and then down 95%. And so the second step, and this is the basic one. So then the second step in the animation is to take it to 0 so that it comes into view. And then the last step brings it up. So 95% is how far down it is. And then this will bring it up. And so just so we can see what that looks like. And when the page is loaded, it animates over and then up like that. And then the text pops in later because it is in this span element, and it has a different animation, so it comes in a little bit later and just kind of pops in. But so that's the simple of how keyframes work and why they are important in animation.
Awesome.
Cool.
Good job.
All right. Am I the only other one teaching tonight?
I think so.
Okay, I'll just jump right in it then.
Cool.
All right, so I'm talking about transforms this week. It's going to be really quick. So transforms applies to 2D or 3D elements. You can rotate, scale, move, skew, the elements that you want. So I've got pulling up some examples here. So here, this rotates it. This is your rotate. Pretty cool, I guess. So they have there's a bunch of property values. They have matrix, translate, scale, rotate, skew, perspective, initial, inherit, and I'm just going to show some examples on those. So here's your matrix. So you can click on these to see the different ones. So matrix is 6 values for 2D, and it's a 4x4 matrix in 3D, so it's 16 values. So if you're doing 3D, it's going to change it a lot more than the normal 2D. And then on translate, I'll just run through these. Here's the 2D translate. It's just going to move it across the screen down. So I know I used one of these. It wasn't translate, but it was moving. I think it was a different action, but it moved my thing across the screen for one of my assignments. So I showed you scale, rotate. The one I really liked. Let's see, which one was that? I think it was this one. Was it this one? No, might be later in my PowerPoint. So that's the rotate one that you've already seen. Scale. Let's do scale. Scale just makes it, bigger or smaller, depending on which axis you're using. You can stretch it, or you can make it long, make it tall. Um, so that's just some examples of those. So the origin properties, this one is using, it's rotating it, but then it's also using where it rests on the x-axis and the y-axis. So you're gonna have the three, properties there that you're gonna have to enter in. And this one's doing a rotate, but it's rotating it, it's actually making it upside down. This one's kind of crazy, but then this one has the x, the y, and the z. So transform style property, it specifies how nested elements are rendered in a 3D space. Now this is the one I thought was really cool, and I could see a lot of potential using this just to make some crazy things happen. So if you're 3D, you can turn the 3D on and off here. So if you look at it in 2D, one is sitting on top of the other one. Once I go 3D, it shows how it's going to interact with that. So it goes through the other element. So you can see it coming out the back, which I think is pretty cool. So there's just different rotations on that. And you can see how they interact with each other. So that's basically all I had for that one. And I just thought it was, some of the stuff was pretty cool. And if you need it, you can look up more on it. But it's just another way to move your element around the screen. And I think this is what they use for like the card flips and stuff. How it shows it flipping over from one side to the next. So I thought it was pretty cool. Just another way to move stuff.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I didn't know about that page, and I just checked it out, and I tried one of them, like the rotates, where you can select all the different ones. But instead of clicking the radio buttons, I was just I make sure one of them is clicked, and then I press the down arrow, and it just goes through all of them in cycles, and has this pretty cool 3D effect of rotation.
Yeah.
Maybe I can find it.
Yeah, so I can see the, where a lot of that would come in handy when you're creating your transformations from one, how you view your object or your element in a certain way to how you want to see it. And it's just another layer upon layer of code. Anybody have any questions they need help with for any of their coding? I guess maybe we can help out.
Pretty good. I only have like 2 or 3 more topics that I've got to submit this week, then I'll be good.
It's all due by next week, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. But I'm hoping.
And the professional paper is next week as well.
Yeah, I think next week's week 10.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have to finish our code and turn in the professionalism thing to him. Now, is that by the end of next week? All of that's due?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I've got a lot of code that's almost ready. So he's going to be getting a lot from me.
5 weeks left and I can get a C.
That's right. It'd be nice to be done with trying to get those topics submitted.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you guys know if the project at the end of the semester, is that like a group project that we all work on, or is it individual?
It says individual on the, and everything
That's
that
the application we're supposed to be designing after next week, right? That we have 4 weeks to do it.
Right. But I think it looked like it was individual to me from the wording.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's individual.
Because I mean, if you here, I'm gonna turn the camera off since we're done doing presentations or the